The Millionaire CEO was on his way to another empty meeting, until he saw two boys bullying a little girl who had his eyes. Every day at precisely 6 p.m., Alex Carter left his office without a glance back. His staff knew better than to interrupt him after that hour. For Alex, boundaries were sacred, routine was law, and emotions were noise. He had spent the past decade crafting a life of absolute control, tight schedules, spotless reputation, and an emotional range as flat and cold as the concrete he walked across each night. His reputation as a brilliant but ruthless CEO made him a legend in the business world, and he liked it that way. People didn't ask questions. They respected the distance he demanded. That evening, nothing felt different at first. The sky over the city was clear, painted in a dull orange glow as the sun lowered between the buildings. Alex walked briskly toward his car, already reviewing his dinner meeting in his mind. He hated being late, even by seconds. His driver had just opened the back door of the black car when a sharp, high-pitched sound stopped him mid-step. It was a cry, short, broken, unmistakably frightened. Alex's instinct was to ignore it. City streets were noisy. Children cried. It wasn't his concern. But then he heard it again, and something about the tone made him glance across the courtyard toward a small public playground nestled between two buildings. His jaw tensed as he spotted the source of the sound. Two boys, probably 8 or 9 years old, were shoving a younger girl near the swings. She was small, couldn't have been more than 6, and she wasn't crying now, but her body language said everything. Shoulders stiff, fists tight, eyes fierce. She wasn't afraid, she was trying not to be. Her long dark hair was pulled back into 2 tight braids, and her pale blue dress was scuffed with dirt from the pavement. Alex stood frozen, irritated at first, at the noise, the disruption, the fact that he now couldn't unsee it. He glanced around. No adults. No parents rushing in. No one doing anything. He hated complications, especially emotional ones. And yet, his feet moved toward her before he fully understood why. The boys hadn't noticed him until his shadow fell over them. When he spoke, his voice was low, firm, and completely unfamiliar to the children. Enough. One of the boys opened his mouth to argue, but Alex's cold gaze made him think better of it. They backed away, muttering something under their breath, and disappeared behind the fence. The girl didn't flinch. She looked up at him slowly, her bright blue eyes locking with his in complete silence. He stared back, startled by the color. They were his exact shade of blue. For a moment, the rest of the world faded. He crouched down to her level and asked quietly, "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No," she said, her voice soft but steady. "They're just mean." Alex stood, unsure what to do. He wasn't good at this. Comforting. Caring. He hadn't spoken to a child longer than 2 minutes in years. Still, something about her stopped him from walking away. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even afraid. But the way she looked at him, like she was waiting for something, for him, made his chest tighten with unfamiliar weight. "Where's your mom?" he asked. She looked down. "I don't know. I got lost." Alex hesitated. He should call the police. Or the hotel. Or anyone else. But his mouth said, "Come with me," and his hand reached out without thinking. She slipped her small fingers into his like it was the most natural thing in the world. And just like that, the man who had built a life around never getting involved walked away from the playground with a child whose eyes matched his own, not knowing that everything about his carefully constructed world had already begun to collapse. Inside the car, silence settled like a fragile fog between them. The little girl sat upright beside Alex, her small hands folded tightly in her lap, her blue eyes flicking between the window and his face, studying him in the same quiet way he had studied her. He gave her his coat when he noticed her shoulders were trembling slightly, not from cold, but from the shock that always came after adrenaline wore off. She didn't speak, and he didn't press her. For someone so small, she carried herself with surprising composure, and he wasn't sure if that comforted him or disturbed him more. His driver kept glancing at them through the rearview mirror, silently waiting for instructions. Alex didn't know what to say. He hadn't planned this. His life wasn't built for unpredictability, much less children. He finally cleared his throat and asked the girl her name. Maya, she said softly, not looking at him. He nodded slowly. I'm Alex. A beat passed before she added, I know. I've seen you on a billboard. He almost smiled, which surprised him more than her comment. She must have passed by one of his corporate ads, Alex Carter Enterprises, a face built on business, not humanity. She didn't seem impressed, which somehow made him like her even more. He didn't take her to the police station right away. Something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she glanced around every time the car slowed, as if she were searching for something familiar. Maybe it was the fact that she hadn't cried. Or maybe it was those eyes, his eyes, staring back at him through a face that looked nothing like his own and yet stirred something so deep in his chest it frightened him. He found himself asking her if she remembered her address. She blinked, thought for a moment, then recited a street name and a number so specific it startled him. He gave the address to the driver, and they turned off the main road. The neighborhood they pulled into wasn't fancy, but it was clean, well-kept, and quiet. Rows of modest houses lined the streets, each one with neat lawns and porches with weathered rocking chairs. The car stopped in front of a small blue house with white shutters and a red mailbox. Alex got out and helped Maya down. She walked up to the front door with cautious steps, then paused and looked back at him. Will you come? She asked. He didn't answer, but he followed. She knocked once, then again. A moment later, the door opened, and a woman stepped into view. Alex's world stopped. She was wearing a soft gray sweater and jeans, her dark hair loosely tied back, her eyes wide in disbelief. Time folded in on itself as he stared at her, the past and present crashing together in one silent, devastating heartbeat. Lily. The woman he hadn't seen in over 6 years. The woman who had disappeared from his life without explanation. The woman who had once told him she wasn't ready to be a mother, or anything to him. Lily's eyes darted from Maya to Alex, and her breath visibly caught in her throat. What? What are you doing here? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya turned back to her and said calmly, he helped me when those boys pushed me. I got lost. I didn't know how to get home. Lily dropped to her knees and pulled Maya into her arms, holding her so tightly that the little girl squeaked. She stroked her hair, kissed her forehead, whispered her name again and again. Alex stood motionless, unable to look away. He was staring at a woman who had broken him once, and a child who bore his eyes, and possibly, unknowingly, his blood. When Lily finally looked up at him, her face was pale and her voice trembled. You shouldn't be here. Alex's response came out quieter than he intended. She has my eyes. Lily closed her own and pressed her forehead to Maya's. It's not what you think, she whispered, but she didn't deny it. Alex took a slow step forward. How old is she? Lily didn't answer right away. Her arms tightened around Maya. Then, quietly, she said, 6. And just like that, everything shifted. All the years of silence, all the questions left unanswered, all the reasons he thought she left, it all narrowed down to the little girl now resting her head against her mother's shoulder. He looked at her again and realized, with terrifying clarity, that this wasn't a coincidence. This was fate forcing its way into the one life he had tried so hard to keep clean of chaos. And this time, he wasn't walking away. Lily stood frozen in the doorway with Maya clinging to her side, her arms protectively wrapped around the child as if afraid someone might try to take her away. The second stretched between them, heavy and sharp, as Alex tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The girl, Maya, his daughter, was real, living, breathing, standing right in front of him, and Lily had known it all this time. She looked older, more tired than he remembered, but still achingly familiar. The last time he had seen her, there had been yelling, frustration, unresolved tension. She'd walked away without a goodbye. He had tried to find her at first, had sent messages she never answered, made calls that rang endlessly. Eventually, he buried the pain under work and routine, convincing himself it was for the best. But now she was here, in a modest home with a 6-year-old girl who looked at the world through his eyes. Maya had slipped quietly into the house, as if understanding this moment wasn't meant for her. Lily remained in the doorway, still watching him. She finally moved aside and whispered, "You should come in." Alex entered slowly, trying not to let the storm inside him show. The house smelled like lemon and something warm from the oven. Toys were tucked in corners, books stacked on shelves, a blanket draped over the back of the couch. It felt like a home. It was quiet but lived in, and every small detail stabbed at him. They sat across from each other in the living room, both upright, careful with their posture, like strangers meeting again after too many years and too many secrets. Lily didn't speak immediately. She stared at her hands, then at the floor, then finally at him. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said softly. "You left," he replied, not with anger but with something deeper, betrayal. "I didn't leave to punish you," she said quickly. "I left because I was scared. I was alone. I didn't think you wanted a child." Her voice cracked. "You didn't even want a relationship." Alex's jaw tightened. "That wasn't your decision to make." The words were cold, but his voice wasn't. It was full of everything he hadn't said over the past 6 years, grief, loss, and disbelief. "You took that choice away from me, Lily." She nodded, the guilt in her eyes unmistakable. "I know. And I've lived with that every day since she was born. I should have told you. I should have trusted you." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together. "Why now?" She sighed, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Because I couldn't avoid it anymore." She started asking questions about her dad. "I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't know how to tell her something I'd hidden for so long. And then today she came home holding your hand." Neither of them spoke for a moment. In the hallway, Maya's small voice carried softly as she sang to herself, oblivious to the storm unraveling just one room away. Alex rubbed the back of his neck. "She's incredible. Strong. Smart." He paused. "She deserves to know the truth." Lily looked up at him, and for the first time, there was no fear, just sadness. "And what about you?" she asked. "Do you want to be part of her life?" He stared at her, stunned that she could even ask. "I already am," he said. "I just didn't know it until today." That simple truth landed between them, heavier than anything either of them had prepared for. He stood slowly, unsure if he should stay longer. "I won't disappear," he said quietly. "I want to get to know her. I want to be her father." Lily didn't stop him as he walked to the door, but she did follow him out onto the porch. The sky had turned dark while they spoke. The street was quiet. Before he could leave, she said, "She likes pancakes in the shape of stars. She's afraid of thunderstorms but won't admit it. And she sleeps with 3 stuffed animals lined up exactly the same way every night." Her voice softened. "If you're going to be part of her life, you should know these things." Alex turned to her, and something in his expression shifted. "Then tell me everything," he said. "All of it. From the beginning." And for the first time since that moment in the park, Lily gave him a look that wasn't guarded or defensive. It was open, uncertain, but real. A beginning. Something neither of them had dared hope for before today. The next morning, Alex didn't go to the office. He cancelled his meetings, rescheduled a call with the board, and silenced his phone. It was the first time in over a decade that he had willingly put his company on hold. But none of that mattered anymore, not compared to what he'd found the night before. His thoughts were full of Maya's quiet voice, her brave little face, the weight of 6 stolen years. He hadn't slept much, tossing through the night with memories of Lily, questions she still hadn't answered, and the unshakable realization that somewhere out there, his daughter had grown up without him. By 10 a.m., he was parked down the street from Lily's house, unsure if he was being intrusive or respectful. He didn't want to overwhelm her or Maya, but he couldn't ignore the pull. The front door opened before he had the chance to decide. Maya stepped out, wearing a yellow hoodie that hung slightly too big on her, with a small backpack strapped to her shoulders and her hair once again neatly braided into 2 even plaits. She didn't look surprised to see him. In fact, she walked toward his car like she had known he would be there. She tapped on the window once, and Alex rolled it down. "Mom said you might take me to school," she said plainly, eyes expectant but calm. Alex blinked, then nodded. "I'd like that, if it's okay with you." She opened the door, climbed in, and buckled herself without another word. He stared at her, caught between awe and nerves. She didn't act like a child meeting someone new. She acted like someone who had already made up her mind. They drove in silence for a few blocks before she spoke again. "Do you really work in that big glass building with the fountain?" Alex smiled despite himself. "I do. That building is mine, actually." Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with suspicion. "Like, you own it?" "Yes," he said, amused. "Why?" "That's weird," she muttered, turning back to the window. "You don't look like someone who owns buildings." He chuckled quietly, unsure if that was a compliment or a 7-year-old insult. After they arrived at the school, she got out, slung her backpack over one shoulder, and paused before walking away. "Are you picking me up too?" she asked without looking back. "Do you want me to?" Alex asked, his voice quieter. She shrugged. "I don't mind." Then she ran off without waiting for his reply. Back at Lily's house, she was waiting at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of coffee and that same exhausted look in her eyes, the look of someone who had been carrying too much for too long. She gestured for him to sit. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "I wasn't sure you'd let me," he replied, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with unfinished sentences and memories packed too tightly to unpack all at once. But then Lily did something unexpected. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small photo album. She placed it in front of him without a word. The cover was worn. When he opened it, the first photo was of Maya as a baby, wrapped in a hospital blanket, eyes already bright blue, cheeks round and pink. He didn't realize he was holding his breath until he exhaled shakily. Page after page, the album documented a life he had missed entirely: first steps, first birthday, finger paintings, Halloween costumes. Maya smiling in a swing, Maya asleep on Lily's chest, Maya standing in a kiddie pool with a crooked little grin and wet hair sticking to her forehead. Alex flipped through it slowly, reverently. He stopped at a photo of Lily holding Maya, both of them mid-laugh, caught in a moment that looked so full of joy it made his heart ache. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked again, but this time there was no accusation in his voice. Lily ran her fingers along the edge of the table. "I was scared. We weren't in a good place, and when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know if I could count on you. I didn't know if you even wanted children." She paused. "And then time passed, and I kept thinking I'd tell you eventually, but, every day it got harder." Alex closed the album gently. "I can't get those years back. But I want the rest. Whatever that looks like." Lily's expression shifted. She wasn't crying, but something in her eyes softened. "She's still getting to know you. I don't want her hurt." "Neither do I," he said. "I want to be there, for both of you." She nodded slowly, still unsure, but less afraid. And when Maya came home that afternoon, she ran straight to him and handed him a drawing, 3 stick figures standing under a sun. One of them had a suit and blue eyes. Beneath it, in careful letters, she'd written, "Me, Mommy, Dad." And just like that, it wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was real. Over the next week, Alex's world began to shift in ways he never anticipated. His routines, once so sacred and untouched, were now constantly interrupted by school schedules, bedtime stories, and questions about why clouds looked like animals or whether fish could have dreams. He found himself checking his phone less for emails and more for updates from Lily about what Maya ate for lunch or if she remembered to bring her art project. What surprised him most wasn't how easily he slipped into a rhythm with them, but how much he wanted to. The idea of stepping back into his previous life, the cold, calculated world of mergers and deadlines, started to feel distant, almost irrelevant. Maya, for her part, remained cautiously curious. She never asked him directly why he hadn't been there before, though the question hung between them like a shadow. Instead, she tested him in small, subtle ways. She handed him broken toys to fix without asking if he knew how. She'd sit beside him during cartoons without saying a word and glance sideways to see if he laughed at the same parts. She'd ask if he knew how to cook pancakes, then pretend to critique his flipping skills. Each moment felt like a trial, a quiet audition for a role he was desperate to earn, even if he couldn't say it aloud. Lily observed all of it from a respectful distance. She didn't interfere, didn't guide him or warn Maya. She just watched, and slowly, he felt her trust begin to return. She wasn't warm toward him, at least not the way she had been years ago, but the walls were lower now. They talked every night after Maya fell asleep. Sometimes about parenting, sometimes about the past, occasionally about nothing at all. One night, he found her asleep on the couch with a book on her chest and her phone still playing a podcast. He covered her with a blanket and sat in a chair beside her, watching the rise and fall of her breathing with a strange sense of peace. On Friday, he picked Maya up from school again. She came running out, her backpack bouncing behind her, and launched into a breathless monologue about how she had been chosen as the class helper for the week. "I get to pass out the milk cartons," she exclaimed, climbing into the back seat. "And next week I might get to be line leader. That's like being the boss, right?" He glanced at her in the mirror, smiling. "It's exactly like being the boss." She grinned back at him, that crooked smile that reminded him so painfully of Lily. When they got home, Lily was already in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. Maya immediately began pulling papers out of her backpack, showing off her spelling test and a drawing of a castle guarded by what she called emotion dragons. Alex stood in the doorway, watching them. There was something so domestic, so quietly beautiful in the way they moved together. He hadn't realized how much he had missed until he saw it forming right in front of him. Later that evening, after dinner and a shared round of silly charades that left them all breathless with laughter, Maya was brushing her teeth when she called out through the bathroom door. "Dad, can you read tonight?" The word hit him like a soft shock. He froze in place, toothbrush in hand. Lily looked up from the dishes, her eyes widening slightly. Neither of them moved for a second. Then Alex slowly stepped toward the bathroom and answered, "Yeah. I'd like that." That night, he read her favorite book twice. The first time she listened carefully, her head resting on his arm. The second time, her eyes closed midway through, and by the end, her breathing was slow and even. He watched her for a long time before turning off the lamp and stepping out of the room. Lily was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "She called you Dad," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, still stunned. "She doesn't use that word lightly." "I won't take it lightly," he said. They stood there for another moment, then Lily gave a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something close. A beginning. And for Alex, that was more than enough. The following days passed in a blur of ordinary moments that suddenly felt extraordinary. Alex began to learn the pace of Maya's world. He woke up earlier than usual just to be there when she came down the stairs with her tangled braids and sleepy voice, mumbling about cereal flavors and mismatched socks. He practiced patience when she took forever to tie her shoes and didn't complain when she asked the same questions over and over again. He even started carrying a small box of crayons and stickers in his briefcase just in case she wanted to draw in his office during those afternoons when Lily had errands or work. Somehow, the rhythm of this new life, one that demanded emotional availability and spontaneity, fit him better than the old one ever had. Maya's comfort with him deepened in quiet, subtle ways. She no longer hesitated before grabbing his hand when they crossed the street. She left her drawings on his desk, sometimes labeled with his name in wobbly handwriting. One afternoon, after he picked her up from school and brought her to the office for the first time, she sat in his big leather chair and said, "You're not as scary as your building looks." He laughed, and his assistant nearly dropped her clipboard from shock. Nobody had ever made Alex Carter laugh like that before, not in this office, not like that. He began carving out more time, declining evening meetings and canceling out-of-state travel without explanation. His board didn't question it, no one dared, but a few whispered that he was distracted. He didn't care. He was distracted. But it wasn't a weakness. It was the first time in his life something had felt more important than the company. Lily noticed the change. She didn't mention it, but he saw it in the way her shoulders began to relax when he entered the room, the way her gaze lingered on him a few seconds longer than it used to. She had started trusting him again, not just with Maya, but with the fragile piece they had begun building together. One evening, while Maya was at a friend's birthday party, Alex offered to help Lily reorganize the attic. She was hesitant at first, unsure how to be alone with him in a space filled with so much personal history. But they climbed the narrow stairs anyway, and within minutes, they were knee-deep in dusty boxes and long-forgotten memories. They laughed over old clothes, leafed through yearbooks, and even found the box of baby things Lily had once packed away for Maya, the hospital bracelet, her first pair of socks, a stuffed elephant missing one ear. When Alex held the bracelet in his hand and read Maya's name and birthdate, his throat tightened. "I should have been there," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Lily didn't reply right away. She just sat down beside him on the wooden floor and said, "You're here now. And she knows it." Her voice was calm, steady, but her eyes glistened. For the first time in years, he reached for her hand, not to ask for something, not to make a point, but to hold it, simply and silently. She let him. And in that stillness, among boxes and dust and faded memories, something old between them flickered back to life. Later that night, after Maya was home and asleep, Lily stood in the doorway of the guest room, watching Alex fold a blanket on the couch. "You know you don't have to sleep down here," she said softly. He looked up, unsure if he had misheard. "You could stay upstairs." "In the spare room," she added quickly, as if reminding them both this was still fragile. He nodded. "If that's okay with you." She stepped aside. "It is." That evening, in the quiet of the spare room, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, not because he was anxious or out of place, but because he felt something so unfamiliar it took him a while to name it. Belonging. He wasn't just a visitor in their lives anymore. He was becoming part of the foundation. Not as the man who had been missing for 6 years, but as the one choosing to show up every single day now, without being asked. And somewhere in the middle of the night, he heard Maya's small footsteps padding across the hall. She opened the door without knocking and whispered, "Can I sleep here?" He lifted the blanket and scooted over without a word. She curled up beside him, her small head resting on his arm, and within moments she was asleep again. He looked at her, this strange, wonderful little person who had changed everything, and knew he would never go back to the man he used to be. Not after this. Not now. The morning began quietly, with golden sunlight spilling through the kitchen windows and the smell of toast warming the air. Maya sat at the table with her coloring book, humming to herself as she filled in the petals of a flower with a purple crayon. Alex stood nearby, preparing breakfast with more confidence than he had a week ago, flipping pancakes with a focused determination as if each one were a test he couldn't afford to fail. Lily moved around them, still wearing her robe, her hair pulled into a loose knot, sipping coffee as if this were any normal day in any normal family. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that everything was on the verge of changing again. It was Maya who broke the quiet spell. She looked up from her drawing and said, "Are we ever going to be a real family?" The question landed with such weight that both adults froze. Alex turned slowly, his hand still holding the spatula, while Lily's fingers tightened slightly around her coffee mug. Maya wasn't looking at either of them. She kept coloring, as if she didn't even realize what she had asked, but they both knew she had. Lily placed her mug on the counter and walked over, kneeling beside Maya's chair. "We are a real family," she said gently. "Maybe not like everyone else, but we are." Maya frowned. "But we don't live in the same house. Other kids have moms and dads that eat dinner together every night." She paused. "Sometimes I pretend we do too." Alex knelt on the other side of her. "Would you want that?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. Maya nodded without hesitation. "Yes. But only if Mommy wants it too." Later that afternoon, after Maya had gone to a playdate with a friend, Alex and Lily sat together on the front porch, the quiet between them more reflective than tense. For a long while, neither spoke. The breeze picked up, rustling the wind chimes Lily had hung years ago, long before she imagined a day like this would ever come. "Finally," she said, "she wants something simple. And somehow it feels like the most complicated thing in the world." Alex didn't answer immediately. He stared out at the yard, watching the trees sway gently. "I'm not asking for us to go back to what we were," he said. "We've both changed too much. But I want to build something with you now, something new, something better, for her, and for us." Lily turned to him. "You mean move in? All of us?" He nodded. "Not just for appearances. For real. I want to wake up to her drawings on the fridge and your coffee mug beside mine. I want to be the one she runs to when she scrapes her knee and the one who takes the trash out before you ask." Lily laughed, not out of amusement but surprise, the kind that comes when someone speaks a truth you didn't realize you'd been longing to hear. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted. "I've been doing this alone for so long. Letting you in, it means risking everything I've built." "I'm not here to take anything away from you," he said gently. "I'm here to give her what she deserves, and to give you a reason to not do it alone anymore." That evening, when Maya came home, she found them cooking together. Alex stirred the sauce while Lily chopped vegetables, and they moved around each other with an ease that surprised them both. Maya stood in the doorway, watching them quietly, and then walked over and slid her drawing onto the fridge. It was a picture of a house, with 3 stick figures inside, one tall, one with a braid, and one smaller with bright blue eyes. Lily looked at the drawing, then at Alex. "She already thinks of us as one," she whispered. Alex put down the spoon and looked her in the eyes. "Then let's catch up to her." And that night, for the first time, they sat around the table as a family, not pretending, not holding their breath, just existing, together, like it had always been meant to be. The move happened more naturally than any of them expected. There was no dramatic announcement, no boxes stacked high at the door, no grand decision that marked the transition from separate lives into one. Instead, it was in the quiet things, Alex gradually spending more nights at Lily's house than his own, Maya placing his toothbrush next to hers without asking, Lily beginning to refer to the spare bedroom as, your room, instead of, the guest room. Over a few weeks, the change settled over them like warm sunlight, steady and undeniable, and soon it felt strange to remember that it had ever been different. Maya blossomed in ways both subtle and loud. She was more confident at school, quick to volunteer for anything that let her show off her growing family. She stopped hesitating before using the word dad, now calling out to Alex easily, whether it was for help with homework or to ask him to reach a jar of cookies she swore Lily kept on the highest shelf just to be difficult. She painted their first family portrait in art class and brought it home beaming. It showed the 3 of them holding hands under a sky filled with stars. She'd written one word under it, forever. Alex hung it in the hallway, right above the light switch, where he saw it every morning. Lily changed too. There was a lightness in her now that had been missing for years. She laughed more freely, rested without guilt, and began letting herself imagine a future that didn't involve always being strong on her own. One evening, after Maya had gone to bed and they were curled on the couch watching an old movie, she turned to Alex and said, "You know, I didn't think I could trust anyone like this again." He didn't answer, just held her hand a little tighter. She didn't need him to say anything. His presence had become her answer to every doubt she had carried for too long. There were moments of imperfection, of course. Alex forgot to pack Maya's lunch once and drove across town to deliver it wearing a suit and mismatched socks. Lily accidentally sent him into full panic mode when she jokingly texted, "We need to talk," and then got caught in a meeting for 2 hours. Maya once drew on the living room wall and burst into tears thinking they'd both be furious. Instead, Alex sat on the floor with her and helped her turn the scribbles into a rainbow. The wall stayed that way, an accidental mural, a testament to their new, imperfect, and deeply loved life. As the seasons changed and summer neared, they planned their first vacation as a family. Nothing extravagant, just a small cabin by a lake where Maya could swim and chase fireflies and ask endless questions about the stars. Alex bought 3 matching fishing poles even though none of them knew how to fish. Lily packed too many books, and Maya brought every stuffed animal she owned. On their first night there, as they sat on the porch wrapped in a shared blanket watching the moon reflect on the water, Maya leaned her head against Alex's chest and whispered, "I'm glad you came back." He hadn't known how badly he needed to hear those words until she said them. Later, as he carried her to bed and tucked her in beside a pile of plush creatures, he stood in the doorway for a long moment, looking at the small figure fast asleep under soft light. Lily joined him there, resting her head on his shoulder. "She's never slept so peacefully," she said. Alex kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Neither have I." Their story hadn't followed the rules, hadn't unfolded in the expected order, and hadn't been free of pain. But here they were, in a house that held both memory and healing, in a life they had chosen together, messy, beautiful, and entirely theirs. And as the night stretched out before them, quiet and safe, Alex knew with absolute certainty that he hadn't just found his daughter. He had found his way home.